So, in this short video, I will be sharing my top 3 tips for quitting porn in 2024. Tip number 1 is to stop trying to avoid your triggers. This is something that I have done for such a long time. Things like quitting like Instagram, like not being on TikTok. For a little while, I was literally leaving my phone in the office at work in a locker to avoid like facing the cravings, because I was having like really intense cravings for a few days, and I was like, okay, if I leave my phone in the office, I'm fine. I'm not going to look at porn. And yeah, that worked for a few days, sure. But on like the 4th day or something, when it was the weekend and I took my phone home, I went and had a setback. I went and had a relapse, because all I was doing was trying to avoid and push away those sensations instead of actually accepting them and like just being okay with the discomfort. So that doesn't work. You can't just avoid triggers. Imagine you like walked home from school every day for like a few years, and there was an ice cream van, and you decided to buy an ice cream like every day after school, and the habit sort of formed where when you see the ice cream van, you get the craving and you buy an ice cream. That's probably what would happen if you did that for quite a while. You just develop a habit. And then one day you're like, okay, I don't want to eat this ice cream anymore. So you take a different route home, and that works. You don't eat an ice cream because you don't go past an ice cream van. Brilliant. But then what happens one day when you're just out and about, and that same ice cream van actually starts to like ring its bell as they're going past? Like, what if you hear that and then you see the ice cream van, the cravings come up, but the last time you saw the ice cream van, you went and bought an ice cream, you're probably going to go buy an ice cream again. Like, you can't just resist the cravings. Like, you can't just try and push away all of the triggers. That doesn't work. You have to actually accept the cravings. You have to accept the triggers. You have to accept that discomfort for a little while to change the neural pathways in your brain and take an alternative route. So like in 2024, I'm actually going to be using Instagram again, and I'm just going to have to change the neural pathways and stop looking at sexual content. If I have a craving, then I'll just learn to deal with that in a healthy, accepting way using a really effective and efficient script, which my mentor has given to me recently. Step number 2 is going to be to let go and like sort of identify all the unhelpful, unproductive thoughts. This is something that my mentor calls junky thoughts. So essentially, these are like ideas in the brain which come from the addicted part of the mind. And I've had so many for such a long time. So this will be things like, oh, it's okay, I'll only look once and then I'm going to stop looking. Or it's all right to have a setback, once every few months. Or things like, oh, work's been really hard for me, I'm really stressed out. If I do this, I'm going to feel better. All of that's just the addicted part of the mind taking over. And it can spin you out into crazy like habits. So you can end up like thinking that you're going to look for like a second, and then you end up looking for like 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then an hour. And, you're just like, Jesus Christ, I've just had a wank like 3 or 4 times. Like, what have I done? How has that ended up happening? And this all starts with like the addicted part of the mind just telling you lies essentially, and like rationalizing use of porn. It's just a lie. So you want to start identifying any thoughts. A big one for me is like, let's say I'm on social media and I do see something slightly sexual and I scroll past it. I'm like, no, I don't want to look at that. And by the way, I don't recommend like spending much time on social media. Just like on a side note, I personally try to avoid it. Not because I want to avoid porn, but just because in general, I don't really think it's that helpful unless you're building a business and you need it, or you're connecting with friends. But anyway, that's just a side note. So let's say you are on like social media, you do see like a girl, she's pretty fit, scroll past, but then like in your mind, you're like, oh, I've just had like a relapse, like I've seen something sexual. And then you're like, well, I may as well look at more sexual stuff. And then you just like look at more and more and more until you have the full-blown relapse. If you didn't have that initial thought of I've already had a setback, or like I've already looked at something sexual, if you didn't have all that guilt and shame around that first scroll where you like genuinely accidentally saw something sexual, then you wouldn't have had a full-blown relapse. So this is just junky feelings, junky thoughts. They're not real. Like it's not rational to think this way. It's just that addicted part of your brain taking over. And that's okay. It's totally natural for those thoughts to happen. But don't listen to them. Like, you've got to just like see them for what they are. See that the addicted part of the brain will try and do whatever it can to get you to have a relapse. That's just how the brain works. Step number 3 is to have a very, very specific method, a practical way of dealing with any urge or craving. You have to have a plan, because they're gonna come. You can't ignore the fact that you have to go through cravings You have to process them in effective ways to overcome this problem. You can't just escape the cravings. They're going to happen. I've been on some streaks throughout 2023 where I was on like 4 or 5 months without porn, and then the craving would hit and I wouldn't know how to deal with it, because at that point in time I didn't have a specific script. And so you have to learn how to deal with these cravings. Now, if you want more support on any of this, then do head over to thomasmolyneux.com and you can get support from myself and also my mentor, Mary Paulus. I hope this video has been helpful, and I genuinely really hope you are able to quit porn in 2024, because like, it's not your fault that you've ended up cultivating this habit. Like, the world around us is just so messed up right now, and so I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, really hope that you can quit this and just have like an amazing 2024 full of connection and love and laughter. So yeah, all the best, and I'll see you in the next video.